Hello and welcome to Sophisticakes by Mary. This is officially my Valentine's Day upload. I did a double heart cake top forward cake. I also show you a little trick on how to get the back of this cake design frosted in a very simple way. And it also has some chocolate drip, stenciling, and sprinkles. So first I took my heart-shaped cakes that I baked in heart-shaped pans, and I am leveling off the dome off the top of these. Just by using a serrated knife, tucking your elbow into your side, and letting the turntable actually cut for you. You bring the knife in towards the middle a little bit at a time, and I did this for all of these layers of cake. There's 3 in the big one and 2 in the small one. And for the small one, I just used 1 pan and cut it in half. I had chilled these in the freezer for about 10 minutes before torting and leveling them. So this one took me a few turns, a little bit of time to get this cut in half just because it was so cold. But don't worry, if it seems a little crumbly, that's because it was cold. And once it came to room temperature, it got nice and moist again. I know people hate that word, but hey, it's a good thing in what I do. So I am just using a little bit of simple syrup, which is equal parts water and some granulated sugar. You heat them to a simmer, and then you let it cool. And that just keeps your cakes moist as you're working on them. I don't always show this step, but I do this for most of my cakes. And then once you have the simple syrup on, you just set them aside and let them soak up the simple syrup before moving on to the next step. Maybe 10 minutes. 5-10 minutes is all it really takes. So I had some issues with my phone that I use to record my videos this week. The battery was acting up, and the footage I thought I had of the bigger cake getting filled was not in existence. I did not know that my camera had turned off. So I did the same thing that I just showed you in the smaller heart-shaped cake with all 3 layers of the bigger cake. So here's my little trick, and this is just kind of a crumb coating of the cakes. I do the same technique though with the final coat of buttercream. I take some parchment paper, put it on a board, put a layer of the ganache down, put the cake on top of it obviously, bring that ganache up towards the cake and go ahead and crumb coat it like you normally would. A crumb coat is just a thin coating of buttercream or ganache that you put on to lock the crumbs in so that they do not come through on your final coating of buttercream. Now, especially for this design, I wanted, since it's going to be turned on its side, I wanted some extra stability. So that's part of the reason I did a chocolate ganache filling and crumb coat. It just kind of gives it a little bit more stability. Now just remove that excess ganache and then set it in your refrigerator while you work on your next layer of cake. Now I did the same thing with the small cake. Now when it comes to putting in the refrigerator, I would say put it in there for, if you're timing it, 20 minutes or 10 minutes in your fridge or your freezer to get your ganache or your buttercream to firm up. No longer than that really, because if you do longer than that, especially coming out of the freezer, you could end up having a problem with condensation, which is just very difficult to work with, especially when you are newer to cake design. Now, I am doing the exact same thing with the buttercream to get the backside of the hearts covered in buttercream also, because that's with the cake top forward, you have the top and the bottom exposed. So you need to put buttercream or ganache, whatever you're using, on both sides. So I've just removed that parchment paper and put it down on top of my buttercream. And I didn't show it, but I did kind of wiggle it around a little bit, press down on it a little bit, and wiggle it around to try to remove any extra air bubbles that might be in between the parchment paper and your cake. Even if you do end up with air bubbles, you can go back after you're done, after it has firmed up, and fill in those little pockets if you need to. Now just make sure you got these sides smooth since you're going to definitely see them. And then pull in that top ledge towards the middle again. Please excuse my dirty paper towel next to me. I try not to show the mess typically, but the angle I had the camera at this time, you can see my mess. I'm sorry. And then I did the same, obviously, with the small tier. I guess tier's not the word, the small cake. These aren't tiered. They are standing on their sides, aren't they? Well, they will be. And again, once you get these coated, go ahead and put them in your refrigerator for 20 minutes or your fridge for 10 minutes to get your buttercream to firm up. And then you can remove the parchment paper from the back. Actually, take that back. Let's stencil it before we take it off the parchment paper. Since it is laying horizontal, this is easier to do in this position than it would be if you had propped it up on its side and then tried to do the stencil. So I just used a slightly thinned down, just white buttercream. Kind of the consistency of peanut butter is the way I like to explain it. And remove your excess. Try not to push down too hard because you don't want to move your stencil around, but hard enough to remove a good majority of it. But most of it, if it is not scraped off, is going to stay on your stencil because it just didn't get scraped through. So be able to see your stencil through it, but don't worry about it if it's not completely all removed. And now I just took it out of the refrigerator or the freezer, can't remember. Just put a little ganache on the board. And then since this is chilled, it must be not frozen, but from the freezer. Since I am able to just pick it up and woman handle it and put them where I want them, they're pretty firm. You would not be able to do that if they were at room temperature. I strongly suggest just popping them in your freezer. It makes your life so much easier. Now I'm going to do the chocolate drip. This is how I check to see if the chocolate is, or the ganache, white chocolate ganache is at the right temperature. If it's too hot still, too warm, it'll drip too far. If it's too cooled, it won't drip enough. So you have to find that happy medium where it drips down where you want it. That kind of comes with practice. That's why I think using your spatula or your scraper, or you could even use a plate, anything that has a flat surface that you can raise up to see how it's going to drip. That's why I like to check it first. And these will continue to drip a little further until they have fully set up. And if your cake is chilled, it will set up firmer because that will firm up your chocolate faster. Now, of course, again, my camera cut out on me. So you missed me putting those candy hearts on all of them. So I went back and I kind of showed you how I did one of them. And then I'm just using some white and red sprinkles, little tiny dragées, and I am putting them on the ganache. Now you're gonna wanna put wait until your ganache is set up quite a bit because the weight of the hearts, any of your larger sprinkles, will pull them down off the cake if you try to attach them right away. Maybe put it in your fridge for, 5 minutes until you can touch it and it doesn't stick to your finger, but it's still not completely firm because you still want it to stick. So there's that perfect in-between stage that you, again, with practice, you kind of figure out. And I'm just attaching those by dipping my finger in water and then dipping my finger in the sprinkles and then attaching them to the drip that way. Yes, there's a lot of fallout. There's a lot of sprinkles that end up all over the place, but you can just put a sheet pan underneath what you're doing to hopefully catch most of that. See them all on my board? All over the place. I did not have a sheet pan underneath and I did a lot of sweeping and I'm still getting them stuck to my feet. All right, so I added some flowers, third time where my camera cut out, but I just put a little buttercream on the plate and then stuck the flowers into that. So there you go, guys. I hope you liked it, and I wish you a very, very happy, happy Valentine's Day. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video. And if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to check out my other social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.